Hello and welcome to another podcast about the Brexit situation. I'm Ali Garib Nawaz, and today I'm going to speak about the recent developments leaving many businesses feeling more uncertain than ever on the path ahead. The focus of today's discussion will be answering some of the questions we're hearing from clients and colleagues on what Brexit actually means. I'm joined today by three experts of the subject, and that is Sam Gray. Hello, Sam.
Hello, sir.
Are you good?
I'm good, thank you.
Good to hear. Patricia Finch. Are you good?
I'm really good, thank you.
Good to hear, lady. And last but not least, Callum Brown.
It's a big pleasure being on the show.
Thank you so much. And all of them, as I said, are really familiar with the political situation called Brexit. And I'm conscious that you three have all been eating, breathing, and sleeping Brexit for the last few days. So thank you for taking the time out to come and have a chat with me today. Patricia, coming to you first, as we often do. So much seems to have moved since our last podcast. Quickly take us through on what has happened since the last update.
Yes. Well, it certainly has been a busy couple of weeks, and we've crossed some important milestones in the Brexit journey, starting with approval between EU negotiators and the UK over the draft withdrawal agreement, and a short document outlining the frameworks of the future relationship. That was then agreed by Cabinet, and then that's where it started to go slightly wrong, with at the moment about 8 resignations. But let's not get caught up with the politics just yet. The timeline after the cabinet approval now is the 25th of November. That's when there will be a special summit in the EU, where the Council will rubber stamp the agreements before the vote in Parliament, the meaningful vote, which we expect will happen in early December. People expect perhaps around the week commencing the 10th of December, and that's where things will, of course, get challenging. Most commentators at the moment expect that the UK government will lose that vote, at least the first time. Some speculations that there might be a couple of votes in Parliament before the deal is approved. In summary, we are one step closer, but we are definitely still a few hurdles away from total certainty from a business point of view. From a political point of view, touchwood, at the moment, we are recording. We haven't had enough letters to trigger a leadership contest. But the thing that I would say is that from a business perspective, we are still much in this deal or no deal territory. Because one thing I think people overlooked is that by default, by law, on the 29th of March, the UK will leave the EU. That is not impossible to turn around, but it is very difficult to reverse the current trajectory in the 130 or so days that are currently left for the Article 50 process.
Thank you for your speaking on that subject. Yes, that actually makes a lot of sense, and thanks for that grinding us on that. Going to come to next, Sam. Now that we have to position for some time that a deal is more likely to be happening than no deal. Patricia has clearly then just touch on some of the hurdles that we still got to go through to get that deal. Has your view changed with the recent developments?
Well, I think we need to be cautious. So having the political agreement is certainly a positive step forward, but it is still going to go through a legal ratification process. And as Patricia suggested, time is tight. We're really got to be mindful of the fact that in the remaining time, the firms still need to think about what their continuity plans are in the event of no deal, and in selective cases, perhaps move forward with some of the plans.
Okay, so you expanded a little bit on that for me. These contingency plans. What sort of things should people be moving ahead with now?
As we talked about before, and we had a recent blog by Rebecca Smith, who advised of 6 areas of continuity planning. This will vary from organization to organization, but all businesses should look to those areas which are most relevant, and also those areas which may take the time to address. Things like increasing stock level, making sure you know your suppliers, and their Brexit exposures. Continue to look at issues around personal data, and where it's held, make sure you've got the right approvals of or licenses to be able to continue trading. Look at HMRC accreditations now, and also look at your systems both for supply chain, but also your workforce.
I should make a point to listeners that you can find more about all of that he said and Patricia said, and those areas in our website. You can write it brexitpodcast.com. So, Sam, one niche question, if I may ask. You're also our expert on financial services, and clearly people in that sector have been waiting on a lot of time to see what the agreement on the future relationship might contain on that. What do you think of what's being contained in the political declaration?
In one sense, the fact that financial services is specifically referred to, that is positive, but doesn't actually help significantly at the moment. The EU has been very clear that the future relationships will be based on equivalence rather than passporting, which are more restrictive than the case for the current business models. First, we'll really need to continue to push forward with their plans. One of the things that the EU did specifically comment on is that in the event of a deal, the equivalence will be examined before the end of the transitional period. It does indicate that some thought is going to go into it. But again, at the moment, no deal planning really is required by those in the industry.
Okay, thank you. Callum, I'm going to draw you in now. We talk quite a lot there about no deal, but let's just pause for a minute and talk about the deal. I know you're leading a lot of scenarios, planning with us, clients, and preparing for the deal scenario, not just no deal. What clarity do we have now on what the deal might look like?
Well, the first thing to say is that uh, most companies we are supporting now are rightly focused on the deal, uh, on the no deal contingency planning. So that's the imperative. Having said that, when working with our clients to prepare the contingency plans, we do take into account that the likely changes in the event of a deal to inform their decisions. And when they take them, for example, the UK set out its policy on settled status for EU nationals, which applies whether or not there is a deal or not deal. Um, Companies can and should be taking action now to communicate with their employees and put in place to appropriate support packages and plans. Whereas, on the other hand, the situation on personal data is binary. If there is a deal, we can be confident that there will be no change, whereas without a deal, it will not be possible to transfer data from the EU to the UK without putting in place GDPR compliant measures. Uh, in this case, and many other companies should be assessing their exposure now and knowing that what they need to do, but holding off taking action while they can. In terms of the future deal at the moment, when recording this podcast, we only have 7 pages, although we are told that there will be more details soon. It is all pretty high level stuff, but we can already see that this is shaping up to be. What I would describe anyway as a fairly standard or be in its nonetheless ambitious free trade agreement or services, with some form of custom union along with single market rules for goods.
Okay, that's actually helpful. That still isn't certain though from what we have seen so far. So, Phil, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, well, that's why I was careful to say some form of customs union, because logically that's where this is heading. This would retain frictionless borders for goods trade, but at the expense of striking new trade deals. Um, Sovereignty and long-term competitiveness for these reasons because the details simply isn't yet ready. The future declarations may be slightly fuzzy on this as well as other issues. Let's not forget this as a political declaration, so it is not actually legally binding. To some extent, it will change as negotiations and importantly politics evolve. To come back to your questions, Ali, I think this gives companies the sense of the parameters and the direction of travel for the final deal, but they still need to more clarity in order to make firm plans.
Okay, so still quite a lot of uncertainty to work through then. We have talked a lot about the no deal contingencies, and you have mentioned a few there. Andrew has clearly given us some of the list of things that businesses should be getting on with with now for no deal. Are there any other things that you should and would add to the list so that they are as prepared as they can be for a deal scenario too?
Really good question there. Well, it is absolutely right to be focusing on the contingency planning side of things, but there are a number of no regret actions that will bring benefits in all circumstances and should be taken forward now. Indeed, many of those covered in our contingency planning blog that Andrew referred to earlier, such as knowing your supply chain, reviewing contracts, engaging your employees, these are no regret activities. Looking slightly forward ahead, assuming that there is a deal. Companies should really be tracking the status of those negotiations, so that they can prepare plans and take action once the details are firmed up. This clarity is going to emerge incrementally over the coming days, month, months, and I am afraid years.
Right. Yeah. Phil, so you just picking all up on that. If we are going to track these negotiations, what should people be looking out for the immediate future?
Yes, really good question there, also, Ali. I think the first thing I would say is Sam alluded to it, is that we got the summit on the 25th of November, but importantly there might be some more detail published around the summit, around the shape of the future relationship. We've had 7 pages, and even some suggesting that there could be an additional 40 pages or so, further illuminating businesses with what the relationship will look like. That will be really important for businesses. We will be picking over the detail of that on our webcast on the 26th of November. Very important milestone. And then really is probably going to go a little bit quiet again while the debate turns back to Parliament ahead of the meaningful vote in December. As I said at the top, there might be more than just one vote. So I think in that period between the 10th of December and Christmas is going to be a fiercely fiercely noisy, potentially, of course, leadership votes, and all sorts of things in between here. Hopefully, we might come out that unscathed, or at least with a semblance of a deal, so that the European Parliament and the European institutions can approve in the new year ahead of the 29th of March.
Very good. Thank you, Phil, and thank you all. I'm going to bring things to a close there, and this is time. I would like to wrap up with one's piece of advice from each of you from that was listening. Patricia, you were lost talking. You go first.
Yes. I have said this to clients before who had the pleasure of me coming to bore them with Brexit. Is don't read the papers, because the next few weeks that we are about to enter are going to be full of political noise and political machinations. And from planning point of view, that's not the information that you need. Actually, businesses need to step back and concentrate on the horizon and what the deal and what no deal means for them.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. What's your tip?
Yes, I think it is really just hold your nerve. Some changes that businesses will be required to make will take time. It is really a case of focusing on those with the greatest lead time and making progress now.
Right. Great. Phil. Last but not least, how about you?
Similar to the others from me, I will focus on those contingencies and contingency planning, but don't forget to advance your no regret activities, as these will help you prepare for all eventualities, whether we have a deal or whether we don't.
Great. Thank you all for. Thank you all very much, and thank you for the listeners for joining us. As I said, you can watch us and see us at Brexit's podcast.com.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.